The content herein is for informational purposes only, not intended as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and is not to be substituted for direct advice from your doctor.
Today's LymphCast program is proudly sponsored by VitaSupport MD, the makers of Vein Formula 1000 and Lymphatic Formula 1000. These MPFF-based nutraceuticals are backed by science and recommended by doctors specializing in venous and lymphatic disorders. Visit VitaSupportMD.com to learn more.
Greetings and welcome to our LymphCast show. Believe it or not, episode, better sit down for this one, episode 50, the big 50, halfway to 100. I was in the room when Dr. Chubak had this little seed of an idea in the back of his mind. Thought, what if we did this? We could bring in experts and doctors and researchers and authors. And he's done it. And we're up to episode 50. We have guests lined up who want to be on. We have tons of listeners. And I want to get a reflection from Dr. Chubak in just a moment. But I do want to remind you, the viewer, the listener, head to our website, lymphcastnetwork.com. Everything is there. Every show is in podcast land. Wherever you go for your podcast, type in LymphCast. This show will come up. And also, every show is on YouTube. Now, before we go around the table and meet everybody, let me get a few words of wisdom from Dr. John A. Chubak, the guy who started the whole thing with an idea, or halfway to 100, over 50 hours of content. Dr. Chubak, your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Paul. Paul and I have known each other a long time. We've done a lot of good work together. We've done several podcasts together. We did a podcast about my book, Make Your Own Damn Cheese. We did a podcast about my book, The Straight A Handbook. And so we've done hundreds of episodes together. And this is all a labor of love. We do it from the bottom of our hearts to share what we know with others and to educate. But the LymphCast podcast has been really a special project because we've brought so many people together behind this movement for people with lymphedema, lipedema, venous disease, chronic wounds, wounded patients. And I think that the greatest beneficiary or recipient of wisdom as a result of it has been me in being able to be on these programs, meet all of these great clinicians, all of these great people, patients, therapists. So to put our 50th episode kind of on the digital recording today gives me great pleasure and great pride. And working with Amy and Matt has been fabulous. Amy and I have worked together over the years on various projects. But this one is really special, and I'm glad that she's here for number 50. It just makes perfect sense. And of course, I'm glad my dear friend and esteemed colleague, Dr. Eicher, has made the time in the middle of her busy practice in California. She interrupts her day to do this show, and I'm greatly appreciative and feel blessed to have all of you in my life. And with that, let's get the next 50 done and get to 100, and we'll just keep going from there, right?
All right. We probably should take a moment, Dr. Chubak, to thank the CEO of the Chubak Medical Group, the producer of this show, your wife, Dr. Diane Chubak, correct?
Yes, 100%. Without Diane, it wouldn't be possible. I mean, she's done an incredible job producing the show, and with your help, Paul, and of course, Dr. Glavitsky, Monica Glavitsky, and Maria Hughes, who's behind the scenes. It takes a lot to put one of these things together, much more than most people could ever imagine. But as I said, it's a group effort. Diane has been amazing. Our team on the air and behind the scenes, amazing. And we're all doing this to raise awareness and to continue to give the message that there's help and there's hope. And that's what we're going to do today as well. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, you got it. And you have changed lives already. The emails I get, and I'm sure you get more. Well, let's go around the table and meet everybody. From California, Dr. Emily Eicher. Greetings, Dr. Eicher. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Hi, team. This is so wonderful to be here together on the 50th anniversary. And thank you, Amy, for bringing the wonderful guests. And we just saw each other at the Fat Disorder and Research society meeting in St. Louis, and that was a marathon meeting, wonderful. And it's so great to see you again. And thank you for bringing your wonderful guest. And we can start immediately. So greeting everybody.
All right, we'll bring everybody in on the guest panel, but one more time, let's bring in the founder, the owner of this show. He also is the founder and owner of Vita Support MD. They make Vein Formula 1000 and Lymphatic Formula 1000 from New Jersey. Physician, surgeon, Dr. John A. Chuback. Hello again, Dr. Chuback.
Thanks, Paul. I just want to mention quickly before I introduce Amy, this FDRS meeting is really lighting up social media. My goodness, there were, I think, 500 plus people at this meeting, and I'm never going to miss it again. I have to tell you, I haven't been, but after what I'm seeing on social media, and Dr. Eicher is somewhat of a celebrity. My goodness, I don't know if anybody left there without taking a picture with Emily. I see so many pictures of her on social media, so I'm sure I will be there next year. LymphCast will be there. Vita Support MD will be there. So it's a wonderful thing. Now, I want to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Amy Rivera, who has done so much for people in the lymphedema space, the lymphedema world, sufferers of lymphedema, and how she has done a miraculous job as a non-medical professional background to raise awareness tremendously in the minds of medical professionals around the United States and around the world with the tireless work that she has done over the last number of years, and not the least of which are most important, the Lymphedema United book, of course, that she did with Matt, and the other blueprint program she's working on, and so many others. So, Amy, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to see you again, and please introduce tonight's guests, and we'll get going.
Thank you. Quick note, I do have a little bit of a medical background. I used to be a nurse. I don't think a lot of people know that.
I did know that. I apologize. I forgot that. You became such a star. I forgot that you were once amongst the mere mortals with people like that. I do remember that. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No. It's okay, because it's really important to share that nursing was my first love, and I thought lymphedema took it away. But however, it did not. It gave me the experience and education that I needed, but I just didn't know that helping people was going to be aligned with my gift that God has given me, which is my lymphedema. So, I just used to have, a little bit of that background, and I just.
My apologies. Forgive me, please.
John, you're okay. You're okay. So tonight's guest, we have two beautiful young ladies that I have personally spoken to at one time or another, either about lipedema or lymphedema or both. And so our first guest is Carmen. She's from California, but I wanted to share a little bit about Carmen before she shares her chapter with us. I found Carmen on Instagram, and her handle is what caught my eye. It's Eat the Cake Too. And when I saw this, I immediately thought of, well, why can't we have our cake and eat it too? And so when I started digging into her Instagram, that was the message that she was promoting through her brand. So I found Carmen because my daughter has both lymphedema and lipedema, and I was trying to find a way to connect with her because I have lymphedema only. So when I saw Carmen's Instagram, I just immediately fell in love with her spirit and her attitude towards these conditions or diseases. And so, Carmen, I would love for you to take it from here and share a little bit about your story and your journey with the lymphedema and lipedema. And the thing that I saw the most out of your chapter is you growing up with this. And so you have a little bit of a different perspective than Crudy. And when Crudy shares her chapter, it's really interesting, Crudy's journey as well, and from a medical professional's point of view to a patient's perspective as well. So we have Carmen and Crudy is from India. So it's 2:30 in the morning where Crudy is at. So Carmen, if you wanted to share your story with us, I found it to be amazing with your journey as a child and where you are today with it. So
Thanks, Amy. Well, yeah. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet everyone. My name's Carmen. I am a body acceptance advocate and lymphedema advocate on social media. And first and foremost, like, I feel like meeting Amy has been one of the greatest blessings. Truly, I will get emotional thinking about it, because I think that before her, I didn't really know that this amazing community existed. And I think anyone who suffers from any type of chronic condition can understand how isolating it feels. And so I'm eternally grateful for this community, Amy. So I love you, but you know that. So yes, I was actually diagnosed with lymphedema at the age of 3. So very young. I was experiencing pain through my feet and legs pretty much as early as I could start communicating with my mom, especially in the morning, walking down the stairs. And so I grew up in Oregon, and we saw a few specialists, and that's the diagnosis that I received. And I think it was really challenging for everyone to navigate. It's not anything that anyone was familiar with in my family. And it was more predominant in the right side of my body, as often lymphedema is more prominent in one side. So I think my mom, did her best. She always tried to get me different size shoes. I think she did the best she could to not make me feel so different. But it was definitely very, very challenging for me growing up with this condition in, I think, where I grew up, because it just, no, I never saw anyone else who looked like me. And even existing in a bigger body and then with lymphedema, it was just really challenging. And I think kind of the saving grace through my childhood was, which I promise I'll tie it all together, but was fashion for me was always kind of a way for me to express my confidence and kind of grow this odd sense of confidence, I would say, that I think a lot of people in more normal bodies, even my friends growing up, didn't have. And that's something that I always really clung to. I didn't get my lipedema diagnosis until much later in life. And I will never forget the moment that I got it. And I definitely shed a lot of tears in the doctor's office, because it was such an eye-opener for me. I spent so much of my life just at odds with my body, constantly trying to change it, constantly trying to lose weight, doing everything that I thought I should be doing. And as we know with lipedema, that those fat cells will not respond to diet or exercise. So that was a big point in my life. But through all of this in my life, this is kind of how Eat the Cake 2 was cultivated, with this sense of, always being kind of told the boxes that I fit in, as far as what society, deemed beautiful or what society deemed acceptable. And so for me, I just said, well, I should be able to have the cake and eat it too, metaphorically. I get to make the rules for my body. This chronic condition, these 2 chronic conditions don't define me. They don't stop me from getting into, the having love relationships, romantic relationships, having a career that I want, wearing the clothes that I want. And so that's how I built my community. And I saw such a need for it, especially, with lipedema and lymphedema. As I've learned more about both conditions, lipedema is one of the most underdiagnosed conditions I think that we have, especially in women right now. So that's become such a passion for me. But kind of like Amy said, just I think that I put it on myself to just share that joyful moments are possible. Having really good memories and experiences are possible with these conditions that can feel so debilitating to our body image. And so that's the passion behind what I do every day through my social media platforms. And it's just really rewarding to meet people who can especially younger people who can say oh, now I can look at someone who looks like me and see what they're doing and see that they're, happy and wearing the clothes and doing all the things. So, yeah, I'm that's what I do in a nutshell. Grateful for my community on all my social media platforms, and definitely grateful for our lymphatic community for sure.
So yeah, it was great reading your chapter. You know, I felt really connected to you. So I wanted to ask, like, when you were writing your chapter, did you have any emotional moments, or were there any moments of like, I'm really sharing my story with people because I really believe in what I'm doing is, you know, beneficial for myself and others? You know, how did you feel writing that chapter?
Yeah, I think it's always emotional for me to revisit some of the more difficult chapters of my own life, especially the younger version of me. I think, you know, I know we've talked about this, but like making our differences our superpowers. And that's something that I definitely didn't come to terms with until much later in my life. I mean, I think I spent a majority of my life just really not wanting to accept myself, and especially my legs, you know, and it's still something that I think anyone with this condition can relate to. Like, we have good days and we have days where we still are like, how is this? You know what I mean? Like, how are these my legs? So, yeah, I mean, even talking about now, it's like a little emotional for me because, you know, I think that like, unless you've really lived these experiences, it's really hard for people to understand. And the other thing that, you know, we talk about is like, we don't get any days off. You know, we don't get really any moments off from living with chronic conditions. And I'm kind of grateful that I know that now. I think growing up, I just didn't have the resources or the management tools. And so I think it caused me a lot more suffering and pain, you know, through my legs and my body, because I didn't have the right management tools. So I think writing that chapter and revisiting that is always emotional, but also in good ways too. Like, wow, look at, you know, like, look how far I've come, and like, look what I'm doing with this now. And I think that that's something that I'm really proud of, is that I've taken what has been the hardest part of my, you know, of me growing up, and turned it into something that can be so helpful for others.
Yeah, because you started, I remember watching you start to grow your social media, and then, I mean, you're over 200 something thousand followers on Instagram alone. So these platforms that you utilize to spread awareness, those are younger Carmen's, you know, looking for that inspiration. So you've done a great job, you know, sharing this over your platforms and your YouTube. And I think I follow you on every platform. So, so I learn a lot from you as well, because I, you know, grew up with it, but I was misdiagnosed, and you were diagnosed early on, but then you had a second diagnosis in your adulthood. So, you know, we all have these different perspectives when we're diagnosed, in these different journeys. So I realized that even though we've had these different perspectives and journeys, we still go through the emotional roller coaster of writing our story and sharing it. So I thought maybe I was the only one that still gets, you know, I get really emotional when I write too. Even some days I look at my leg, like you said, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing great today. And then other days I'm like, what happened? So,
Yeah.
you know,
But I think that that's like I think that that's really important that we can share that too, because that's something that is really, I don't want people to have this misconception that like, oh, I'm such a confident woman, like I'm out here spreading confidence and positivity, I have it all together. Like, that's just not reality. Like, we all struggle, and I definitely still struggle, and I try really hard to be vulnerable with my community so that they understand that if you're still struggling, like, it's okay. Like, just keep, you know, it's one day at a time.
mm-hmm.
Like, we know it's one day at a time, and one day can be very, very different from the next.
Yeah, it can be. Dr. Chubak, Dr. Eicher, do you guys have anything you want to?
Carmen, you are amazing. We thank you so much. I think we all are learning from our own journey, and so wonderful that you are sharing. I wish I had more time to be on social media, but it is what it is. I have a question. How were you diagnosed with lymphedema, and what age?
I was diagnosed at age 3. So I went to a couple different doctors where I grew up in Oregon, and I ended up at OHSU, and they did a bunch of, I don't exactly know what they did, but they told my mom that most likely I was missing some of my lymph nodes, and that's how they diagnosed me with the lymphedema.
And did anybody do lymphoscintigraphy on you?
That I'm not sure. That was a long time ago.
Right. Well, you are very young, so maybe now you can have it done and you can confirm the diagnosis of lymphedema. And because it's one thing to be diagnosed because you look like this and that and picture like this and that. And it's good to know if the lymphatic system is fully missing, partially missing, or something else is there going on. And with lipedema, at what age were you diagnosed with lipedema and how?
Not until, I wasn't diagnosed with lipedema until I was, I think 31. And I wasn't familiar with the condition until I started being, around this type of community. And then I am not really sure who. I think I spoke to Amy about it, though, for sure.
Yeah.
She helped me find
Amy diagnosed you.
doctor. No, she didn't. She helped me find a doctor here.
I don't diagnose anybody.
Yes.
No.
No, but
you have the knowledge. So fantastic that you're sharing your wisdom with everybody.
Yeah, she actually recommended me to the doctor that diagnosed me. So
yeah, I don't diagnose. I just say, go this way or go this way, or maybe go both ways.
If you are in California, I am in Santa Monica, so you can knock on my door and I'll be happy to do ultrasound and we'll confirm everything.
Oh, I'm
Dr.
there, 100%.
Wonderful physician, Carmen.
I am
well worth the trip, for sure.
Yeah, well worth the trip.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have a quick question. Emily, our guests may or may not know that you yourself have lymphedema, but it's an interesting situation because we haven't yet heard from Kruti, but Amy and Carmen have been dealing with this their whole life. I wonder if usually you're one of our panelists and our experts, but from time to time you weigh in as one of our lymphedema guests too. And I wonder, we always talk about what a powerful psychosocial emotional problem lymphedema and lipedema are. And it's one perspective when you've dealt with it from childhood and dealt with it your whole life, but you didn't really experience your lymphedema until after cancer surgery as a surgical resident when you were in a much more advanced age. So maybe you would be willing to share with our audience how that affected you, having had normal legs and a limb your whole life, and then suddenly having this change, if you don't mind discussing it.
Vein Formula 1000 and Lymphatic Formula 1000 from Vita Support MD are backed by science and sold in doctors' offices. If you're a physician who may be interested in prescribing or selling these excellent nutraceuticals, please call 862-246-7877 to speak to a representative today.
We can one day write a book and talk with Amy. And I can tell you the story that if I go way back when, I immigrated from former Czechoslovakia, came to the United States at the age of 20, and not knowing the language and not having money, but I don't want to use the quote, I had a dream. I wanted to study medicine, and that was my passion. And all of a sudden I had a lump in the groin, and it turned out to be cancer. And it was fairly interesting not knowing the language and be diagnosed with cancer. And at that time, in early 70s, cancer was one big C, and there was not really much talk about cure and survival and so on. So that was more than dramatic. And I remember being in bed, feeling my leg, and as a former gymnast, I was thinking, are they going to amputate? What would be and what level? And go on. And I don't want to get too emotional about that, but it was very dramatic, being kind of alone in this new world with this ordeal. Fast forward, I was in pre-med in UCLA, and I had a second recurrence. And I was angry. I was angry because at that time we didn't have anti-emetic medication. So I was quite sick. And now, finally, I was a surgical resident, fast forward. And I loved it. As assisting on a simple case of arthroscopy, I experienced excruciating pain. And it felt like blood or water was dripping down my right leg. And the pain was, the best way I can describe is that somebody would crush fine china and flush it through my leg. That pain was not nice. And looking at the operating table, I thought at first, well, this is really not a bloody scene. Why should I feel this? And then I realized that I had lymphedema. That was the onset of my lymphedema. In early 80s, nobody talked much about lymphedema and experiencing how the lymphedema onset occurred. And so then I branched to rehab medicine. And again, at that time, we started to see patients with upper extremity lymphedema secondary to breast cancer. That was probably the early introduction of the lymphatic system. But I was angry. At first, I was happy that I survived those few years and I was able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. But deep down, I was lonely, I was angry, and it was wonderful to be at the Fat Disorder Research Society meeting. There was one wonderful speech talking about hope and surviving and striving and put the right leg forward. Well, because I left my family behind, I did not have the support. So my support was the books, the medicine, and wonderful patients. And so I am happy that I survived and I can share my story with all of you who had this. But yes, there were moments where I was very sad, moments where I was depressed and angry, but blessed. And today I say, so many years later, I am blessed I survived, and there was hope. And there was a hope of getting better and stronger. And even with this lymphedema, I embrace my leg. And you, I think, Amy, you pointed out, Plan A did not work out. I wanted to be a surgeon. I loved it because my first year in the United States, not knowing the language, I was working in a sweatshop. And I have very good dexterity sewing. But it was interesting to use my skill in the operating room. But my motto now is embrace life, embrace every moment, and find the positive issue in that, and share the knowledge, share the wisdom, and share love.
I love you, Emily Anker.
I love you. When I saw Dr. Chubak at one of the meetings, I think it was in Florida, no, before Florida, and I see this tall giant and looking for Emily Eicher, I was down to your waistline. And he embraced me and I said, oh my God, yeah, so great to meet with you. And look what you did. You embraced whatever wisdom and knowledge you have and share with so many of followers and so many patients with lymphedema and lipedema. And we love you, Dr. John.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to raise the level of care in this country together tremendously. And I appreciate your sharing that story. It's an inspiration to each and every one of us. And as you said, there is hope, and we're here to provide that hope and education and awareness and raise the level of care in this country. With that, Amy, why don't we move forward? because I don't want to run out of time. I want everyone to be heard.
Sure, absolutely. So now we're going to move to India and see how the care is in India as we are trying to improve it here in the United States as well. So Kruti, I met Kruti on social media as I meet almost everybody now. And we actually were speaking about Fast and Go hybrid compression bandages because she's utilizing it for her personal care. And then we started talking, and just like Carmen, just like Dr. Eicher, and everyone else who has lymphedema or lipedema, she was going through some of the similar emotions that we've all gone through. And so, the thing that stuck out to me with Kruti was, and the reason I asked her to write a chapter in the book was to get her perspective of being diagnosed later on with lymphedema, but she really focused on self-love. And we all know that's part of a journey that no matter if you have lymphedema, lipedema, or any other condition, disease, or if you're healthy, we all sometimes struggle with self-love in certain situations in our lives. So, Kruti, I just want to thank you for being on at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Much love to you for that. And I really wanted you to share your story on why you felt it was important to share in the anthology, You're Not Alone. And again, I thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me here. I hope I'm audible to all of you. Just a brief introduction that I belong to the medical fraternity since I'm an eye surgeon. I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 34, and I had almost a total axillary node dissection, and even my clavicular nodes were radiated. And immediately post-op, I did notice a swelling on my arm. Imagine that when you're through the harsh tumor diagnosis, you don't discuss about what would be my rehab post-surgery, what's going to happen to my arm. All of that is that time not onto your head. And when I noticed the swelling post-operatively, almost immediately within less than 6 weeks, since most of my nodes were out, the doctor just told me that, look, this happens when your nodes are out. Just wear a compression sleeve and that would take care of everything. He didn't even label this as lymphedema until I went and asked him. So for a year or two, I was okay. I was managing with those basic exercises and everything when COVID struck, and I started doing a lot of physical work more than I should be doing. And I had a major flare up and also an episode of cellulitis. I was, directed to one of the oncology hospitals here in Mumbai, who, after 6 weeks of compression bandaging, could not control my lymphedema. That's when I was very, very angry that, in spite of belonging to a medical fraternity, I don't know what to do about my arm, what to do about the lymphedema. That's when I decided that there is no sulking here onwards, and it's only me who can take charge of my own situation. And thanks to COVID, when I had a lot of time to be on social media, which was not me earlier before, I came across, I was always typing these keywords, how to self-manage lymphedema, how to manage things at home. And that's when on one of the Facebook pages, I read about Fast and Go. And that's where I came to know about Amy, and I spoke to her. And I came to know that there is a whole world of primary lymphedema patients that exist globally. And everywhere there is a search for meeting the right professional to manage it. And since I had a little bit of upper hand to be a doctor, I started studying the subject myself. I connected with the Academy of Lymphatic Studies in US. And apparently that year they were conducting a course here in India. I requested them, they allowed me. I got certified as a lymphedema therapist myself. I met the therapists from Boston who had come to educate us. And they were simply amazed that through social media, I had gathered so much knowledge, which I should have got actually from my oncosurgeon or the rehab team at the hospital. Somewhere I felt that probably the doctors don't tell us because either there is lack of manpower or trained medical professionals in this field. And that's why they always deter from telling the patients. Also, out here, we do not have a good availability of compression garments rather a customized compression garments. I get them ordered from US from me because that's possible for me, but that's not possible for most patients out here. So, it's like when life throws lemons at you, I decided to squeeze a lemonade out of it. And I started meeting more and more patients, doing a lot of voluntary work to understand how each one manages their own. Even before I knew what manual lymphatic drainage was, what compression was bandaging was, in the meanwhile, I met a lady called Tari Prinster from New York, who is practicing yoga for cancer, called the Y4C program. In fact, I adapted yoga as my way of life, where it taught me deep abdominal breathing techniques, which controls your central lymphatics. She taught me that, how yoga involves that you have to work on the lymphatics of your entire body. Okay, it's not that I'm just being struck with secondary lymphedema of my arm. I'm supposed to work on the lymphatics of the whole body. I learned different breathing techniques, pranayama techniques. It was also exercise, which was modified to manage my lymphedema. It's called the assisted sun salutations and different kinds of stretches. Whereas what I was taught in the hospital were just a few, 5 to, name it exactly, just a few neck stretches and shoulder stretches, and that was the end of all. So, from there, I picked up learning more and more, going deeper into yoga, going deeper into the science, studying lymphatics myself. And I came to know that it can be managed to a great extent on your own, even till you meet a certified lymphedema therapist. So early detection is what I like to tell patients, that as a part of anybody going through a cancer surgery, whether it's a breast cancer surgery or an ovarian cancer, the two of which are right now at number 1 in India. India is known as the next breast cancer capital of the world. So when there is so much volume of patients, there's no pre-operative counseling done about the condition. Like, people have so much taboo about even discussing that they have cancer, forget about what lymphedema is. And so out here, I'm trying to work with a lot of other therapists, motivating them to go and get lymphedema therapist certification. I learned it myself, but that's not my profession. So like Amy, when I come across patients, I meet them and I direct them to the right people. But up till now, I just have only 10 fingers and I have only 8 contacts of lymphedema therapists who I think are reliable to look after this condition against what is the volume of the disease right now over here. I didn't even know that primary lymphedema even existed in India. After I read through the book, and I came to know there were other 2 patients who were of Indian origin, Harpreet and I think Radhika, who had primary lymphedema, which was diagnosed with after a lot of mistakes. Like Emily mentioned, lymphoscintigraphy. I've just found a center which is based here in Mumbai who says they would attempt it on a patient who we feel is a query primary lymphedema. So from all this, I would like to share that, I'm working more at grassroots level to make some self-care modules of early detection, exercise, and self-bandaging techniques in local languages, because out here, there is not everyone understands English, which is, a global language. Like, even I circulated my book through a lot of voluntary organization, Amy's book, to different people. But the hurdle here is the language barrier. And the second thing that I've taken up is motivate more and more physical therapists, occupational therapists, surgeons, willing to learn about lymphedema, research about it, and, develop more and more manpower and centers to manage this condition. It's probably given me a new purpose of life, besides my ophthalmology, that my Dr. Steve at the clinic also jokes that post 5 p.m., I'm a lymphedema therapist. And from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., I'm an eye surgeon. And my family now has adapted to my ways, that today they are waiting around to watch me even at this hour to support me.
That's so great that you have, the support system that you do at home. That's wonderful.
Although I've been through a little lesser than what probably all of you have. You've been through a long, long, long journey. But I feel that I had heard Kathy Bates, who was the actress, the famous Titanic actress, in her one interview that, I have forgotten that I even had cancer. But what bothers me now, what stays with me lifelong, is the lymphedema. We all have forgotten that we went through chemos, we went through surgeries, we went through radiation. I think that's all over. And there's no point sulking, but we need to take charge and do better time management, better self-management on this.
Dr. Kruti, I compliment you. You are totally amazing. But I should point out, perhaps past president of the International Society of Lymphology is Dr. Monokaran from Chennai, from down in Apollo Hospital. And he is fantastic surgeon and very knowledgeable about lymphology and all these lymphatic problems. So perhaps you can get in touch with him and communicate.
Also, I would like to point out here that, I'm always on a lookout for surgeons like me who have to wear gloves and tight gowns in the OT. I'm a right-handed surgeon. So, even between two cases, sometimes I need to take a break. Sometimes at the end of the day, when I have done 4 to 5 cases, although my surgeries don't last for hours, they are barely about 15, 20 minutes or half an hour to a higher side per case. But I do have questions unanswered as to, when you have this tight, the bandaging, you can't wear bandages while you're operating because they are not autoclavable. Most of the compression sleeves are not autoclavable. So between surgeries or when alternate days when I operate, I do have flare-ups. So like Carmen said, that there is no perfect day. There are days where I'm really sad, and probably when I have flare-ups, that's the time when I'm interacting with most of these voluntary organizations. And the patients often ask me that, if you know so much, why is your arm swollen yet? So I have to tell them it's like life. It's not the same every day, but you stopping to do what you can. There can be days when you don't feel like doing anything. There are days where I'm so tired and I have so much pain in my neck and shoulder that I can't even wear my night compression garment. But that's fine. I pick it up next day. I let myself sulk that evening, but next morning I'm back to it. So for those purposes, I'm looking out still for some more answers who could guide me how I could work better in the operation theaters to help me manage this a little better. So between my cases or immediately that I come out, I put on the fast and go. The other issue that I often face is that when I'm wearing even those bandages in front of patients, if they see me on the previous day, they would say, "Doc, you have a fractured arm. Are you sure you're going to be able to operate me tomorrow morning?" So in my initial days, I took it as a stigma that, I cannot be seen with a sleeve or a bandage in front of patients. And it's difficult to explain each and every patient spending that 15-minute extra to make them understand what lymphedema is, which I'm yet trying to understand better. So all these issues, which I think even educated professionals do face, and how you modify your workplace. Like I'm also a part-time artist. So my fine pencil grip gets affected when I wear a compression garment to, I can't do those fine writings. I was into cursive writing, which I can't do when I am with my sleeves on. So I've got on to typing. That's what I have modified. I have stopped doing fine painting work and all. But yet, at the end of the day, when I feel like doing it, I'm okay with that bit of flare-up.
Dr. Kruti, again, compliments. What I would suggest is teach your nurse before the operation of another case, to give you manual lymph drainage, even for 5-10 minutes. It should help. And then because your surgical time is not too long, you are with the patient maybe 15 minutes. In between the cases, get manual lymph drainage, and that should help. Of course, you cannot, with your dexterity being impaired, and you are working with the very delicate and small frame, unlike orthopedic surgeon or so, you cannot wear any compression garment. But I think the best solution would be to use either compression pump or have manual lymph drainage in between.
Yeah, so I do that. I do a little quick self MLD on myself, and that just keeps me going.
Yeah, have someone to do it. It's wonderful that you are doing it yourself, but it's so much better if you train somebody to do it for you.
Yeah.
I'm sure I can try this. The pump is difficult at work, but I do have it at home, which I can use it at bedtime.
Right. Wonderful. Which pump do you have at home?
I have the LymphoPress.
Okay. I use LymphoPress, and I designed a special sleeve that goes into a sleeve of the pump. And with that, we have better efficacy, and it helps to redistribute the flow much better. So if I see you somewhere at the meetings, actually, I will attend the European Society of Lymphology in May in Istanbul. So if you have someone there, I'll be happy to bring you a sleeve.
Sure. Maybe I'll get in touch with you on email. And
Okay, very good.
Dr. Eicher has all the solutions and ideas. She wants me to
One other suggestion I have, you can see behind me the picture of that handsome fellow. That was my father, who was an OBGYN for many years. He's no longer with us. But I remember as a kid going with him to watch him deliver babies and things like this on the weekends when he was training me as a young person to become a doctor. And he was wearing elbow-length sterile surgical gloves. And I'm thinking this may be something valuable for you, Dr. Kruti, if you can find those still. I just found this on the internet, sterile elbow-length surgical gloves. So that may give you some compression even during the time that you're operating. So we're coming up with some I think good ideas. They seem to still be available for deep cavity surgery and things like that. So I wonder if that would help you throughout your surgical days to have just a little bit of that compression, even from the surgical glove, may be helpful for you.
I'm only worried about the tight effect where it ends, whether it's on the arm or it's on the upper arm. Wherever the glove ends, there are like two zones. And the moment I'm off the gloves, I can see that there is lymph stasis in that area.
Yeah. I think that you should be able to, I mean, normally, as you know, as surgeons, we scrub to the elbow. I think you should be able to wrap the arm, the upper arm, and that would be okay. And then you might be able to wear something like this right up and place it over that wrap. But it's an idea. And then there are some, there should be some sterilizable non-stretch bandages that you could put on your kit, on your surgical kit, and then the assistant could quickly wrap your arm after you've scrubbed. So I think that we can come up with some ideas for you for sure. It's nice to know that your hand is not so swollen that you've lost your dexterity that you need for that intricate eye surgery. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm able to manage so far.
Excellent.
And perhaps you can consider lymph node transfer.
I want to say real quick, Carmen has to go, so she just wants to say bye to everyone real quick, and then we can continue. Thank you, Carmen.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Thank you for having me. It was nice meeting everyone.
Bye, Carmen. Thanks a million. It was great.
Nice
Thank you so
meeting you,
much.
Carmen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So yeah, like what Dr. Eicher was saying, Dr. Kruti, you said lymph node transfer. Is that what you were saying, Dr. Eicher?
At VitaSupport MD, we believe in creating the best bioflavonoid-based supplements to support your vitality. Bioflavonoids are found in abundance in nature and support excellent health and wellness. The demands and stresses being put on our bodies in these challenging times are unlike any we have seen before. Support your body with the flavonoids it needs to fight inflammation and oxidation. Unlike other products in the marketplace, VitaSupport MD dietary supplements use micronized flavonoids for optimal absorption and effectiveness. Micronization is an advanced process which creates an ultra-fine powder easily absorbed by the body. At VitaSupport MD, we are passionate about making your good health our life's work.
Yes, we have now progressed, improved and we have very good results with lymph node transfer. And I wonder if Dr. Monokaran is doing already lymph node transfer, but they are quite successful. And there are so many wonderful physicians throughout the world that they would, I'm sure, be able to help you just to select a time and be evaluated. And I think you would be definitely a candidate.
Yeah. So it's not yet so popular surgery, or I haven't heard too many success rates out here in my country. And like you mentioned, I would like to go and find out more about Dr. Monokaran in Chennai. That's doable. And I have my own fears about the post-op rehab that is involved, where you need to probably be bandaged for most hours of the day. That would mean taking a break from work and all of that. So right now I'm focused at how can I maintain with the current situation. And if I'm able to do that, I would wait for some more time till it gets better in India to get operated and maintain. And if at all I come to US, I know I have to meet so many of you. And I've heard about Dr. Granza also through Amy's podcast for different lymphedema surgeries. So yes, that's on my mind.
Yeah, we have a wonderful surgeon who's been on the show also from the Mayo Clinic, who's doing lymphovenous anastomosis. There's lymph node transfer surgery. We even had Dr. Håkan Brorsson from Sweden, who I'm in very, very close touch with regularly now, who's currently, I believe, in Taipei lecturing, who's done liposuction for lymphedema in the upper extremity as well as the lower extremity. So this is one of the areas that I really feel strongly that through our program, we're going to raise awareness for patients on the surgical options, as well as the conservative options, non-surgical options, and hopefully get more and more surgeons here in the United States and around the world trained in these techniques, because there's clearly an enormous need for this kind of work, enormous.
Way back when I was at the meeting in Paris, and this was good 25 years ago, time flies, and Dr. Corinne Becker, she was the first one who started with lymph node transfer. And at that time, it was kind of looked upon like, oh, what are you talking about? Well, she is a pioneer, and she shows fantastic results. Of course, not everybody is going to have very good outcome, but if you are a candidate, you may consider, and you may consider surgery too. Yes, it is time consuming, because I just had lymph to vein anastomosis, and I had to take few days out of my practice and very busy time on daily basis. But if you time it appropriately, as you mentioned, when you do it, when you have vacation time, then perhaps you can consider and seek the lymph node transfer, and then you are not going, but most likely you would avoid the complications that you have now in between surgeries and having flare-ups and so on.
Yeah, hopefully it would be something that could stand in the way of progression too, because you're very young and the arm is often in a dependent position, and your livelihood, and of course, beyond the financial aspect of your livelihood, you're a very talented surgeon, I'm sure, and all of the lives that you're going to touch in your career, we don't want that ever to be in jeopardy, and see you get to a point where you can no longer operate and give people the gift of sight. So we're going to help you to look at all of those options,
Thank you.
India
Thank you so
and
much.
around the world, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The other thing, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt.
Okay.
The other thing I want to raise when we talk about raising awareness, I don't know the specifics of Dr. Kruti's case with her breast cancer, et cetera, but here in the United States now for many years, it's extremely unusual for someone to have such an extensive lymphadenectomy of the axillary lymph nodes for staging with breast cancer. And we're doing more, obviously much more sentinel lymph node biopsy, even from the time I was a general surgical resident more than 25 years ago. And I've trained with so many excellent, brilliant Indian surgeons, some of whom returned to India. So we want to raise awareness here on our program for our American listeners and listeners around the world with breast cancer. Please, please, please look at all of the options and always ask your surgeons about the possibility of sentinel lymph node and minimal lymph node biopsy for staging of breast cancer, because the less nodes that are taken, the less likely you are to develop significant lymphedema. So all of these things I think are important in our program to raise awareness at all levels, because as the old expression says, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So wherever we can avoid these issues, of course, we would like to do that.
Absolutely. Well, Kruti, I appreciate you taking the time to share your story.
Thank you so much for calling in from India. And I have to tell you, I want to mention a couple of other things. I always do this at the end, unfortunately. We live in such a golden age. We're so blessed. Kruti's connection on tonight's Zoom call was like she was in the office next door to me here in Paramus, New Jersey. Completely seamless, no chopping. The voice was perfect. The picture was perfect. We live in a golden age that we have this technology. And one of the things, Kruti, I wanted to double check with you. I thought this was so interesting and charming, and again tells us about the wonderful world that we live in. Did you tell us that the yoga guru and instructor that you found was in New York City?
Yeah. So there was Tari Prinster. I actually landed up with her book. Somebody, randomly on Amazon, I found her book and I read through the book and I Googled through her website, and I found that somebody who had learned from here was close by to where I lived in Mumbai. So I connected with that trainer, and based on her principles, I probably maintained my arm for almost 2.5 years without having, even a flare up. Beautiful. And I even practice that yoga on a daily basis, and probably that keeps me going because I'm not too regular with my daytime bandaging.
Beautiful. Well, I just wanted to say again, what a marvelous, miraculous world we live in with technology and so forth. I want to say, and as an American, I'm so glad that yoga is finally getting to India. It's amazing. It's amazing that we live in a world now that a physician living in India is learning something about specialized yoga techniques from someone in New York, and vice versa. It's an international community. It's an international language of people caring for one another, and sharing knowledge and sharing techniques that everyone would always assume this would have been the other way around. A New Yorker found someone in Mumbai to teach them yoga for their lymphedema. In this case, the opposite, which tells us what a brotherhood of humanity we are. Yes. And how this knowledge has become global, and we're sharing back and forth. The last thing that I wanted to mention, there was a word used tonight by, I think, all three of our guests. I think Carmen said it, I know Kruti said it, and I know Emily said it. And we haven't really, I don't recall really hearing it before, quite frankly, when it comes to the psychosocial and emotional aspect of these diseases that I bring up very frequently. What we talk about usually is sadness and depression, sometimes fear, and pity and so forth. But today the word angry was used a few times. I was angry, and that makes perfect sense to me. This idea of being angry after something like this happens to someone. And I think it's something we should talk about more in upcoming shows. And we should talk more about how to manage not just the sadness and the depression that comes with it, but also the anger that comes with it. It almost reminds us of the stages of loss.
Kubler-Ross.
Grief.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I thought that was wonderful that everybody shared that word tonight and was open to admit that that's one of the feelings, that's one of the emotions. Being angry as hell about it, and I can imagine.
And before we end up, I just want to point out what a small world we are living in. Dr. Monokaran was trained at the New York Medical College where I was a resident. And when one of the meetings, I think it was in Italy somewhere, I saw him and I said, I know you from somewhere. And here's the guy from India at the big meeting. And I thought, and we started to talk. I said, that is why I saw you. You surgeons were a little arrogant with the physical medicine and rehab specialists because we had to take care of your patients anyhow. So we were at the same time in the hospital together. So next, if you have a chance, call him and say hi to him. We know each other personally. And he had a wonderful training in New York Medical College. Small world.
Just to share a small thing with you that you mentioned about yoga for cancer, there is a world-renowned center called the Yoga Institute of India out here in Mumbai. And there are courses launched now over here for yoga for cancer. It's both an online and an offline program where they train teachers, they train yoga enthusiasts for even patients who would be willing to learn the concept of the yoga for cancer that I learned from Tari's book. It's now, and they have trained by now almost more than 200 teachers who are currently doing voluntary work at charitable hospitals and pediatric hospitals, educating caretakers, where this is more of a voluntary work and not coming through proper channels of hospitals who should be advocating it as a part of life.
Another important aspect with lymphedema or even without is breathing exercises.
Yes.
I do Wim Hof breathing exercise and I teach my patients about the breathing exercises, which you can incorporate anytime.
And I think we've been touching on some in recent shows, some really wonderful concepts. Again, when we talk about this being a global community and that every aspect of care that we can incorporate that is helpful to patients, we should include. Last time we were talking quite a bit, Emily, you remember about Ayurvedic medicine and Ayurvedic techniques that people are using. Also, when we had Linda Ann Khan on the show not too long ago, her use of aromatherapy in these disorders. Emily's been using aromatherapy in her practice for many years. And some of these practices may not have a physiological or anatomical evidence that we can fully understand or explain right now. But what's most important is, as long as they're not harmful and patients find them helpful, then I think that they are valuable. I'll say
Agreed.
that.
Agreed.
Yes, that's true.
All right. Hey, Nurse Amy, do you want to say goodbye to the doctors now?
No.
Dr. Paul, who has his doctorate in education, and the rest of us.
I am just a lymphedema thriver. That is my most important role.
I don't know what it's like, Dr. Krudi, I don't know what it's like in India, but in the United States, we learn very early to take the orders from the nurses. We know who's in charge very early on.
No, it's the same here.
I'm sure.
We have to take orders.
I'm sure.
I think as a resident, I learned my best basics from a nurse.
Oh, join the club. Yes, we all did. Of course. All right.
And I think I really need to thank Amy and thank my stars that in this day and age of social media, I could connect with her. And I have total gratitude that, I am doing a lot of work probably because she channelized it.
Wonderful.
Very nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we're doing this series, Amy. Thank you for bringing your friends to us to share their stories with the world. I know we're touching lives. I know today something was said that somebody heard that's going to make all the difference in their journey forward. I'm sure of that.
I am
Paul,
too.
do you want to bring us out, our fearless leader?
I sure will. Dr. Truback, if you don't mind, right before I go through the list of things for our listeners and sign off, can you hold that book up once more? And while you're doing that, Amy, if you could tell our listeners how they can get a hold of this book and also put your website out there.
Wow.
Don't make me laugh now. So this book, the anthology, there she is, Dr. Crudy. You Are Not Alone. You can find on Amazon or actually winourfight.org. And we also have the Audible version on Amazon and Spotify as well. And again, it's You're Not Alone anthology, and this is the first series, so many more to come afterwards.
All right. Amy Rivera, thank you very much. Terrific job tonight. We appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
And Dr. Crudy, same thing. Thank you for being with us in the middle of the night for you. We appreciate it.
I want to say one more thing, Paul, before we leave.
Yeah.
One other thing that I think Dr. Crudy mentioned, something along the lines of, my arm may not be as bad as some of you all are and so forth. One thing as a physician in general, I try to tell patients, it's not a contest. Who's the sickest? Who's the worst off? Who's the least sick, right? Each of us is on our own journey, and sometimes someone with a little swelling is really, really heavily affected. And then there are other people who go through lipedema their entire life with lipedema, never recognize they have lipedema, are loved by somebody, have a beautiful life and are full of joy. So sometimes someone can have a huge limb, someone can have a medium-sized limb, somebody could have a slightly swollen limb. We're all on this journey individually, and it's not a contest who's the worst, who's the best. And I know that's not what Dr. Crudy meant by it by any means, but somehow it's easy for us to dismiss so often our own problem and say, listen, I know I'm not as bad off as you, so really I shouldn't be complaining. But we're all entitled to feel upset when we're not well or when we, want to be better. And it brings to mind a lot of our patients with mild disease that people tell them, oh, it's not a big deal. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not swollen. If you feel that you have a problem, I say this again and again on the show, seek help, go for expert opinions, be examined. Like Dr. Eicher was saying earlier, there are so many people who should be getting lymphoscintigraphy or ultrasonography who are not. So don't ever dismiss your condition. Don't belittle it, because you're important and your problem is important. Okay?
All right.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you bet. We want to remind everybody, check out our website, lymphcastnetwork.com. Everything is there. Every show's on YouTube as well as podcast land. This has been LymphCast, episode 50, and next week we'll start the next 50. We want to thank, from California, Dr. Emily Eicher. Thank you, Dr. Eicher, for everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Wonderful team. And thank you, Amy, for your exceptional journey with this book and bringing fantastic people to enlighten everybody with lymphatic disorders and learn from everybody. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. And the gentleman who started this show from a simple idea, and look what's happened from that idea. He's also the owner, founder of Vita Support MD. They make Vein Formula 1000 and Lymphatic Formula 1000 from New Jersey. Surgeon, physician, Dr. John A. Chuback. Thank you for everything, sir.
Thank you, Paul. It's a privilege to be with all of you. It's a privilege to be a part of this effort and this movement.
Absolutely. And again, LymphCast, it's been episode 50. Join us next time for episode 51. Have a great night.